Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button so you don't miss any more shocking and captivating stories. Enjoy watching. Tom Harris sat in his living room, staring at his phone with an unsettling pit in his stomach. His fingers hovered over the screen, unsure if he wanted to continue or just put it down. He had promised himself that he wouldn't snoop again. That day, he had gotten home early from work, hoping to surprise his wife Rachel with a quiet evening. Instead, he'd found something he couldn't unsee. It all started with a simple curiosity. Rachel had been acting a little off lately, distant even. Nothing overt, just little things. She'd become preoccupied with her phone, slipping away to the bathroom more often. Her once warm demeanor now cool and distracted. But what really triggered his suspicion was her sudden need for space. Something she'd never asked for before in their 6 years of marriage. Tom tried to dismiss the thoughts. He tried to remind himself how lucky he was. They had built a life together, a home, friends, and dreams. Rachel was his high school sweetheart, the woman he'd married young. They shared everything, or so he thought. But something had changed. He had always trusted Rachel. So, when the opportunity arose one evening to grab her phone while she was in the shower, he found himself opening the Messages app without thinking. At first, it was mundane. Texts from friends, work messages, and as usual, a few group chats about their friends' kids. But then there it was. A conversation with someone named Jason. Tom didn't recognize the name, and his heart started to beat faster. He tapped on it. The messages dated back a few months, just a few lines at first, nothing strange. But then the texts started getting more frequent and more personal. Rachel, I still think about you sometimes, you know. About how we were, how easy it all felt. Jason, feel the same. I miss us. Right, Rachel? I wish I was still with you. I feel so lost sometimes. Tom doesn't get me like you did. Jason, maybe we could try again. You know I never stopped loving you. Rachel, I don't know, but I can't stop thinking about it. I should have never let you go. Tom's face flushed. He couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin as his mind raced. His wife, the woman he trusted with his entire heart, had been confiding in her ex, and not just casually. There was longing in her words. Regret. He felt betrayed, yet a part of him was still in disbelief. Could this really be happening? Rachel and Jason, the ex-boyfriend from her college years. He had always known about him, but Tom had always dismissed the thought. After all, Rachel had married him, right? She had built a life with him. She had chosen him over anyone else. But those words, those texts, they said something different. Something Tom couldn't ignore. His breath caught in his throat as he read another text. Rachel, sometimes I think about what we could have had. You were always so free, so carefree. Tom, he's not like that. It's like we've settled into something I never wanted. Tom's hands trembled as he put the phone down. His mind was a whirlwind. Rachel was at work right now, and he was left here alone with this gnawing suspicion that had turned into something much more real. His stomach turned. He stood up and began pacing. What should he do? Should he confront her now? Should he wait until he had more proof? The idea of confronting her felt suffocating. What if he was wrong? What if this was just some misplaced sentimentality? A conversation she'd had in a weak moment. But as the minutes ticked by, Tom knew he couldn't just ignore this. Not after what he had read. He had to find out what was really going on. His trust was shattered, and there was no way he could let it go without confronting it head on. Then, just as he began to calm himself, the door opened. It was Rachel. She had come home earlier than expected. Her face was flushed, like she had been rushing. Tom froze. His heart pounded in his chest. Rachel looked at him, surprised to see him standing in the living room. Her eyes quickly flickered to the phone in his hand. Tom's grip tightened, and the pit in his stomach deepened. He couldn't tell if it was guilt he saw in her eyes, but there was something there. Something she wasn't saying. Tom, what's going on? Rachel asked, her voice uncharacteristically sharp. She quickly stepped past him, walking toward the hallway, but Tom didn't let her escape that easily. He had questions, and for once, he wasn't going to let her run. Where have you been? Tom asked, his voice tight. He was trying to keep his cool, but it was hard. His thoughts were racing, his emotions crashing over him. Rachel paused, turning to look at him. Her face softened, but there was something guarded in her expression. What do you mean? I just came home from work, I know, Tom said, his eyes narrowing. But why are you acting so strange lately? What's going on? Rachel's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her purse. Tom, I'm just tired. You're overreacting. Overreacting. That was her answer. Tom wanted to scream. He wanted to throw the phone in her face and demand the truth. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he stood there looking at his wife, wondering just how much longer he could pretend that everything was fine. Rachel sensed the tension and stepped closer, her eyes searching his. "Is everything okay, Tom?" He didn't answer. Instead, he simply stared at her, the weight of the conversation they were about to have already hanging in the air. A confrontation was inevitable. The question now was when, but as Rachel quickly turned away, Tom knew it would come soon. He could feel the distance between them growing wider with each passing second. And as Rachel disappeared into their bedroom, Tom sat back down on the couch, his mind no closer to understanding the woman he had married. But one thing was for certain, this wasn't over. Tom barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the words from Rachel's texts echoed in his mind, haunting him. "I wish I was still with you. Tom doesn't get me like you did." They looped endlessly, each line stoking the fire of his anger and hurt. By morning, he was no closer to understanding why Rachel had drifted so far from him. And yet, in the back of his mind, he knew that confronting her directly without the full truth would only make things worse. But he had to know. He couldn't let this go. He needed closure. Rachel was already gone by the time he woke up. Her car was missing, and the house felt eerily quiet, like the calm before a storm. Tom's hands shook slightly as he grabbed his phone. His mind made up. He had to get more answers. He needed to know if the life they had built together was a lie. The first thing he did was call his friend Sam. Sam had been his confidant for years, and Tom knew he would understand his need for support. The phone rang for a while before Sam picked up. "Hey man, what's going on?" Sam's voice was light, but Tom could hear the concern in it. "I need to talk to you." "It's about Rachel," Tom said, his voice tight. "Everything okay with you too?" Sam asked, the casual tone slipping into something more serious. Tom took a deep breath. "I don't know, man. I'm starting to think something's going on. She's been acting distant, and last night I found something." Sam was quiet for a moment. "What kind of something?" Tom sighed heavily. "Text messages. With her ex. Jason, the one from college. She's been talking to him a lot, like more than just catching up. She said she wished she was still with him, that she's been thinking about him. And now, I don't know what to think. I feel like I'm losing my mind." There was a long pause. Tom could hear Sam's breathing on the other end, as if he was carefully weighing his words. "Tom, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. If what you're saying is true, she's crossed a line. You need to confront her. Not just for your own peace of mind, but for the truth. You can't keep living in the dark." Tom's chest tightened. "I don't know if I'm ready for that. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm just overreacting? What if I push her away for nothing?" "You won't know until you ask her," Sam replied. "But if you keep sitting on this, it'll eat you alive. Trust me." Tom hung up, the words echoing in his mind. He knew Sam was right, but the thought of confronting Rachel, of hearing the truth, terrified him. What if she admitted it? What if she confessed that she had been seeing Jason again? Tom couldn't even fathom how he would handle that. He decided to follow his instincts. He would wait for Rachel to return home and ask her directly. It wasn't the easiest decision, but it was the only one that felt right. The hours passed slowly. Tom found himself pacing, glancing at the clock every few minutes. His mind was a blur of doubt and anger. What had happened to their marriage? Was this just a rough patch, or was it something more? He couldn't understand how Rachel could betray him like this, especially after everything they had shared. They had been happy once, hadn't they? Or was that all just a facade? Finally, the door opened. Rachel stepped inside, looking surprised to see him standing there. Her eyes flickered nervously as she glanced at him, then quickly averted her gaze. "Tom, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tight. "I think we need to talk," he said, his tone low but firm. "Now." Rachel hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She set her purse down by the door and walked into the living room, where Tom was waiting. She sat down on the couch across from him, her posture tense. Tom could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he searched for the right words. "I need you to tell me the truth, Rachel," he said, his voice steady. "What's going on between you and Jason?" Her eyes widened in surprise. "Jason? What do you mean?" "The texts, I saw them," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The ones where you tell him you wish you were still with him. Where you talk about how much you miss him. Where you say that I don't get you like he did." Rachel's face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she simply stared at him, her expression one of disbelief. "I don't understand, Rachel," Tom continued. "Why are you talking to him like that? What's going on?" She swallowed hard, her eyes glistening with tears. "Tom, I don't know what to say. I never meant for you to find those messages. I was just confused. I was going through something. And You're telling me you've been talking to him like that because you were confused?" Tom interrupted, his voice rising slightly. Confused about what exactly? About us, about our marriage. You've been telling your ex that you wish you were still with him, Rachel. That's not just confusion. That's something else. She looked away, tears slipping down her cheeks. I don't know what happened. I never meant for any of this to happen. It was a mistake, Tom, a huge mistake. Tom's breath caught in his throat as his mind raced. His wife, the woman he had trusted with everything, had been looking for something she wasn't getting from him, something she had found in her past. The betrayal was unbearable. I don't know if I can forgive you for this, Rachel, Tom said quietly, his voice breaking. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Rachel's sobs were soft, almost pleading. Please, Tom, don't do this. I love you. I've made a terrible mistake. But I swear, I never meant to hurt you. I was lost. But I want us to work through this, please. Tom stared at her, his heart aching with every word. How could she be so blind to the damage she had caused? How could she think he could just forgive her and move on like nothing had happened? Maybe I should have never found out, he said, his voice barely audible. Maybe it would have been easier if I just didn't know. But I do know, Rachel. And I can't unknow it. Rachel's hands trembled as she reached out for him, but Tom recoiled. He couldn't bear to touch her, not after everything. Tom, please, don't do this, she whispered. Tom stood up, his emotions a whirlwind of pain and betrayal. I don't know what to say anymore, Rachel. I need time to think. He turned and walked toward the door, leaving her sitting there in the silence of their broken home. He could feel her eyes on his back as he stepped outside, but he didn't turn around. As Tom stood outside in the cool air, the weight of the conversation hung heavily on him. This was it, his marriage was over. He couldn't go back to a life built on lies, and now the real pain would begin. Tom spent the next few days in a daze. His mind was consumed by the conversations he'd had with Rachel and the stark realization of just how far she'd gone. The texts weren't just harmless conversations between old friends. They were emotional confessions, declarations of longing and, worse, betrayal. Tom couldn't shake the image of Rachel, crying in front of him, pleading for forgiveness. Part of him wanted to believe her, wanted to find a way to forgive her, but the other part, the part that had been hurt and humiliated, knew that trust was something you couldn't just rebuild overnight. Rachel tried to reach out to him multiple times, but Tom couldn't bring himself to answer her calls or respond to her texts. Every time his phone buzzed with her name, his stomach churned. He wasn't ready to hear her excuses anymore. He needed space. He needed time. He needed to process the gaping hole in his heart that she had left behind. But in the silence, in the emptiness of their home, Tom found himself constantly asking why. Why would she do this to him? They had everything. A stable relationship, a comfortable life, friends, family. Wasn't that enough? He had always believed in their connection, their love, but now it felt like it had been built on quicksand, and it was sinking fast. The worst part was he couldn't let it go. He tried to, but the images of Rachel with Jason kept flooding his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined her laughing with him, the way she had once laughed with him. That intimacy, that warmth. It had been stolen, and Tom couldn't stop replaying the betrayal over and over. But eventually his emotions began to crystallize into something more focused. Anger. He was angry with Rachel, with Jason, and even with himself for not seeing the signs sooner. How had he been so blind? How had he ignored the cracks in their marriage? The signs had been there, the late nights at work, the girls' nights out, that seemed to happen more frequently, the constant secrecy with her phone. Tom had been too trusting, too complacent, and now he was paying the price. One evening, Rachel showed up at the house, her car parked in the driveway, her face pale and drawn. Tom had spent hours stewing in his own thoughts, pacing back and forth, trying to prepare for this moment. But when he saw her standing there, he was filled with a cold, bitter resolve. This wasn't going to be some tearful reconciliation. There were no more chances to be had. He wasn't going to sit there and let her manipulate him into forgiving her. Rachel knocked on the door, and Tom opened it, his face expressionless. I know you're angry, she said softly, her voice shaking, and you have every right to be. But please, Tom, can we talk? Tom didn't answer right away. He stood there for a moment watching her, the woman he had shared his life with, the woman who had broken his heart. Rachel had always been his rock, the one person he could rely on. But now she was just another person who had let him down. You think we can just talk? He asked, his voice low and cold. After everything, after you. He stopped himself, clenching his fists at his sides. He didn't want to shout. He wasn't going to let her see him lose control. But the words were burning in his chest, begging to be said. After you told your ex that you wished you were with him instead of me. Rachel's face crumpled, and she took a step forward, her eyes filled with unshed tears. Tom, I never meant for it to go that far. You have to understand, I didn't know what I was doing. I was lonely. We've been drifting for so long, and Jason was there. He knew me before everything changed, before all the responsibilities, the pressure. It wasn't about him. It was about me, feeling like I was losing myself. Tom could feel his chest tightening. He wanted to shout at her, to call her out on manipulation, but instead he remained silent, his face frozen in a mask of anger and hurt. This wasn't the first time Rachel had blamed her actions on feeling lost or losing herself. It was the same excuse she'd used when they'd argued about other things, but now it was no longer enough. "So what are you asking me to do?" Tom said, his voice laced with bitterness. "You expect me to just forgive you? Because you were lonely. That's what this is about." Rachel reached out for his hand, her voice breaking. "Tom, I'm so sorry. I made a huge mistake. I regret it more than you know. Please, give me a chance to make it right." He pulled his hand away before she could touch him, the action sharp and deliberate. "You don't get it, Rachel. This isn't about mistakes anymore. This is about you choosing to betray me, to choose someone else, even for a moment. You've crossed a line that I can't come back from. I can't trust you. I can't respect you anymore." The tears in Rachel's eyes were falling freely now. She stepped back, her hands trembling. "I love you, Tom. I do. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't want to lose you." Tom shook his head slowly, his expression hardening. "It's too late for that, Rachel. It's already over. You've already lost me." Rachel staggered backward, as if his words had physically hit her. She looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. What do you mean?" Tom's jaw tightened. "I mean we're done. We're over. I don't want to be with you anymore. I don't want anything to do with you." Rachel's face twisted in anguish. "No, Tom. Please don't do this. I'll do anything. I'll work on it. I'll go to therapy. Please just don't leave me." But Tom had made up his mind. He was done. He couldn't go back to a life of lies, of wondering if Rachel would choose someone else over him again. The wound was too deep, and there was no healing it. "I've already left Rachel," he said quietly, his voice devoid of emotion. "I've been gone for a long time." With those words, he turned and walked back into the house, leaving her standing in the doorway, her sobs echoing behind him. He didn't look back. He couldn't. As Tom sat down on the couch, the weight of the decision finally settling on him, he realized something. It wasn't just about Rachel anymore. It was peace of mind. His self-respect. He had to leave this behind, or it would eat him alive. But even as he made that decision, there was a part of him that couldn't help but feel the sting of loss. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the death of what he thought was a future, a family, a love that had been everything to him. But now it was gone, and there was nothing left but the quiet, aching certainty that he had to move on. And that, more than anything, felt like the real betrayal. The weeks that followed were a blur for Tom. His life, once filled with the routine of shared meals, laughter, and quiet nights together, now felt hollow and empty. He had left the house, their house, and moved into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was his. The first few nights were the hardest. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, reaching for Rachel, only to find an empty side of the bed. The silence in the apartment felt like a heavy weight on his chest, but at least it was a silence he could control. It had been 2 weeks since he told Rachel it was over. 2 weeks since he walked out of their shared life, and as time passed, the anger that had consumed him slowly started to dissipate. What was left now was emptiness. He'd avoided Rachel's calls, ignored her texts. He knew there was nothing left to say. Every apology she had sent, every plea for forgiveness, had only made him feel more resentful. Her words no longer had the weight they once carried. They had been hollow, just like their marriage had become. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized that maybe Rachel had already checked out long before he had caught her. Maybe the cracks had been there for months, years even, and he had simply been too blind to see them. The hardest part of it all wasn't even Rachel's betrayal. It was how deeply it shook him. Tom had prided himself on being a man who could weather any storm. He'd always believed in his ability to control the situation, whether it was at work or in his personal life. But this had unraveled him in a way that he hadn't expected. The weight of the lies, the infidelity, the secret longing for someone else, it was all so crushing. There were moments when he thought about reaching out to Rachel, if only to find some closure. He'd imagine what it would be like to finally sit down and talk without all the anger between them. But every time he did, the image of her texting Jason, confessing that she still wished she were with him, came flooding back. That image kept him from opening that door again. One night, after a long day at work, Tom sat down in front of the TV, a beer in hand. He had just gotten back from his therapy session, the first one he'd attended since everything had fallen apart. It wasn't that he wasn't angry anymore. It was just that he had finally started processing the hurt. He had to. The anger wasn't helping him heal. It wasn't helping him move forward. As he flipped through channels mindlessly, his phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Tom stared at the screen for a few moments before he opened it. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the name at the top of the message. Jason. "Hey Tom, it's Jason. I think we need to talk." Tom sat still, the bottle of beer forgotten in his hand. His first reaction was to delete the message to block the number. But for some reason, he paused. The anger he had felt earlier was still there, but there was something else now, something deeper, something that demanded an answer. He tapped the screen. "What do you want?" Jason responded almost immediately. "I know this isn't easy for you, but Rachel and I have been talking. I think it's important that you hear what's been going on." Tom's stomach tightened, and his fingers hovered over the phone. He had no interest in hearing what Jason had to say. What could he possibly add to the situation that would make it any clearer? Rachel had already told him everything, or so he thought. Still, there was something in his gut that told him he needed to hear it, to get his side of the story. "I'm listening." Jason's next message came with an almost casual tone. "I don't want to cause more drama than there already is, but I think you need to know that Rachel, she's been struggling for a while. It's not just about us or her wanting to reconnect. There were things that were happening in your marriage that I don't think she could talk to you about. You weren't there for her in the way she needed." Tom clenched his fists. The words cut deeper than he'd expected. Jason was blaming him now. His marriage hadn't just ended because of Rachel's actions, but because of his failure to meet her needs. His mind was racing with frustration. He had been there for her. He had given her everything. How dare Jason think he knew anything about their relationship? Still, he forced himself to reply. "What do you mean by that?" Jason's response came slowly, almost apologetically. "I'm not trying to make this worse, Tom, but Rachel felt like you were emotionally distant. She needed someone to talk to connect with on a deeper level. And when she couldn't find that in you, she reached out to me. It wasn't about love, not at first. But it became something more because she felt like she was losing herself. You were both kind of lost, and you didn't even know it." Tom stared at the screen, the words washing over him. He wanted to scream. He wanted to rip the phone out of his hands, but instead he set it down on the coffee table and sat back, closing his eyes. Was Jason right? Had he really been so distant? He thought about the years they had spent together, the laughter, the arguments, the quiet nights at home. Was he emotionally unavailable? He thought back to the times when Rachel had asked for his attention, and he had been too distracted by work, by life, to really give her what she needed. He thought about all the times he'd assumed everything was fine, when maybe it wasn't. In that moment it felt like everything, his marriage, his pride, his self-image, was slipping through his fingers. How had he not seen it? How had he not seen that Rachel was unraveling, that she had been crying out for him in her own way? And worse, how had he let her slip away to someone else? His phone buzzed again, pulling him from his thoughts. "Rachel," he opened the message, his heart heavy. "Tom, I don't know what else to say, but I am so sorry. I should have never let it go this far. I should have come to you. Please, just talk to I love you, and I know I messed everything up. I want to fix this, but I need you to let me in. Can we try again?" Tom stared at the screen for a long time, his thumb hovering over the reply button. A part of him wanted to forgive her. A part of him still loved her, despite everything. But the bigger part of him, the part that was trying to move forward, to heal, knew the truth. It was over. Rachel had already made her choice. She had chosen Jason, chosen her own emotional distance, and she had shattered everything they had built. With a heavy heart, Tom put the phone down. He wasn't going back. Not this time. The pain was still there, deep and raw, but with each passing day it felt more manageable. Slowly, Tom was learning to live again, not as Rachel's husband, not as the man she betrayed, but as himself. He didn't need Rachel to define him anymore. And as he stared out the window of his small apartment, the city lights flickering in the distance, Tom knew that he would be okay. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually he would find a new kind of peace, and that was enough for now. The end.